Many people today say wokeism is a huge problem.
Arguably one of the biggest threats to modern civilization. Wokeness basically wants to make comedy illegal, which is not cool. At its heart, wokeness is divisive, exclusionary, and hateful.
Woke is the equivalent to stupid. It is the equivalent to stupid. It is the direct equivalent to stupid. For time, because they replaced hard academics with wokeisms. Do you realize that these people are intentionally trying to dumb down your kid?
But what does it mean to be woke? Well, simply acknowledging the problems, imperfections, areas of reform, or being critical of systemic racism in the United States. That's how it started. But now, to be woke means being politically correct and well-informed on social injustices. It's been co-opted by people on the right as a pejorative used to dismiss social justice or people on the left. What angers people about wokeism is really the feeling of the person correcting them or being hypercritical of something and being self-righteous or making moral judgments. When someone says, stop being woke, or they don't like wokeism, what are they really saying? Well, they're saying they want freedom from the consequences of saying or supporting something that is wrong or outdated. They're saying they wish to ignore the real problems that you're addressing in order to maintain the status quo. A common argument is, well, someone somewhere has it worse than you, so therefore you should stop complaining and your concerns are not valid. They're also saying there's never room for improvement and everything is perfect exactly the way it is. I will say that one point where I somewhat agree with the right on this issue is when it comes to politically correct speech. It can be annoying to constantly have to be conscious of the terms you're using or the terms you're used to using, especially when the complaint is almost always coming from people who are just plain overcorrective. I stumbled upon this article posted on Microsoft News that states that the University of California, Irvine released a politically correct list of words, along with outdated words, that they feel should be replaced. It says use they, them instead of he, she, use chairperson instead of chairman, and use legacy status instead of grandfathered. That's just to name a few. But using a gender term like grandfather has never actually triggered any grandmothers, or anyone really. I think all people, no matter what their political affiliation, would be better off not using an accusatory or pressuring tone when bringing up the fact that some of these terms aren't politically correct. I also think that it is a bit much to expect older generations to suddenly alter their speech on the spot so that someone can feel better about it. Instead, it can be pointed out that these terms aren't politically correct, and one can hope that the new generation will use better terms, hoping rather than forcing or being accusatory or self-righteous. It should be said as a suggestion, and maybe not even in the middle of a conversation, and perhaps only if someone directly triggered is present. Otherwise, it really is just a non-issue. But my problem with this article is that in the title, they deliberately say that UC Irvine has banned the old terms. And it isn't until you actually read further that you find out that this was really only a suggestion and that no terms were actually banned. This was an intentional choice made to elicit the most negative reaction and to make the audience believe that their free speech is under attack. Some of the terms the school actually uses are terms like guide, encourage, and suggest. Something should also be said about acknowledging the problems or areas of reform while simultaneously obstructing their solutions, which is what the current neoliberal establishment loves to do. Throughout his presidency, Joe Biden has said some very woke things, such as acknowledging systemic racism, praising civil rights activists such as John Lewis, or even acknowledging climate change is a problem and that we must act on. However, his actions on such issues are few and far between, which is where I agree that wokeness becomes a huge problem. In this case, wokeness is being used solely as a tool to appease the left, while no meaningful gains are made. It's all performative, just like when some Democrats in Congress wore kente cloth in a moment of silence for police killing of George Floyd, yet no real police reform ever came of it. This is bad because it allows people on the right to criticize Biden as being a radical lefty, when in reality, his policies and actions skew more center right. To address Elon Musk, I feel like he must be joking, or he has a very clear right-wing agenda with his statement. He dodged the many other real threats to modern civilization, such as climate change or extreme inequality, income inequality, or even our political system being corrupted by money and politics, to land on something as silly as wokeism. And it kind of makes me sad to say that as an adolescent, I actually used to admire Elon Musk. To address Candace Owens, she's probably referring to critical race theory. But what education is doing is relaying the facts, like the fact that systemic racism exists even today, hundreds of years after slavery, with things like redlining, for example. And education is trying to just show these things instead of hide the legacy of white supremacy. She says that liberals are trying to control your kids, but education in general is determining what knowledge is needed for them to best understand the world around them. So to omit facts is arguably a form of control. She's just using inflammatory language to make parents fear something that they don't understand and writing it off as woke. Both sides are trying to determine or control what goes into the curriculum. So if one side is being called authoritarian, then it must also apply to the other side. I think it's ironic that people position themselves to be anti-woke because it's really just a huge self-report. They're asleep when it comes to social injustices, the same way people position themselves to be against Antifa. They're telling you loud and clear that they're pro-fascist. If people had their way with no more wokeism, we really would be stuck in the past, never evolving past things like sacrificing people to the gods or slavery, or using nuclear weapons. We should be able to identify ideas, speech, or behaviors that could be better for humanity to progress. Hopefully, we can just be less annoying about it, even though I think that the idea of a triggered, self-righteous, overcorrective woke person is more prevalent in the mind of a conservative than in real life. But that's all I have to say. And remember, stay woke.